Weeds can affect us. Weeds can affect us in ways you may not even thought about. Weeds can affect human health. Weeds can affect recreation. Weeds can affect transportation. And weeds obviously can affect crop production. Let's take a look at some of the ways that weeds can affect our lives.
Weeds are defined as plants out of place, or plants growing where they are not wanted. They are persistent, competitive, and noxious, and thus undesirable. Due to their abundant seed production and their capacity to occupy disturbed sites, weeds often interfere with human health and activities. Weeds can affect human health by causing allergies, skin rashes, wounds from spines and thorns, and poisoning if eaten. Weed pollen is a major cause of hay fever. Because of its prolific pollen production, common ragweed is one of the major contributors to allergy problems in the summer and fall. Allergies caused by weeds can reduce the ability to work effectively for the many people in this country who suffer from allergies. Poison ivy is an example of a plant that causes skin rashes in sensitive individuals. Between 50 to 75% of the population is sensitive to the toxin in poison ivy. People can be exposed to this plant through outdoor activities. Poison ivy dermatitis is a common health complaint of fruit workers and foresters. Greenbrier is an example of a weed with sharp spines. These spines can puncture through clothing, causing scratches or deeper wounds. Black nightshade and certain other weeds are poisonous if eaten. Children are especially at risk of poisoning if they consume leaves or fruits of these plants. Poisonous plants can also affect livestock, especially in the western states with large acreage of rangeland. Cattle, horses, and other animals may consume poisonous weeds when little desirable forage is available, or when the weed emerges before the forage in the spring. Poisonous plants can reduce the growth rate in animals and cause abnormalities or even death. Livestock have been poisoned by overgrazing of honey mesquite, which infests rangelands in Texas and other southwestern states. Leafy Spurge is another toxic plant that infests many acres in the northern half of the United States and southern Canada. It is an aggressive perennial that can displace all other vegetation in pasture and rangeland habitats. Leafy Spurge is reported to cause irritation of the mouth and digestive tract of cattle, which may result in death. Leafy spurge is a spreading problem in the central Great Plains and Rocky Mountain states. Yellow star thistle is another very competitive weed in rangeland. It forms solid stands that drastically reduce and frequently eliminate forage production and grazing capacity. Nearly all of the semi-arid to subhumid rangeland in the western United States is potentially susceptible to the yellow star thistle invasion. Yellow star thistle causes chewing disease in horses that eat the plant. Weeds can affect animals in other ways. Spines from weeds can puncture areas around the mouth, affecting feeding. Weed seed can cling to fur, posing a problem in wool production. Hikers and hunters may be covered by the same seeds in the fall when walking through weeds. Besides affecting our health, weeds can affect recreation. Weeds should be controlled in our parks, ball fields, golf courses, and other public areas. Infields, sand traps, putting greens, and similar areas must be kept weed-free to allow for true ball movement and for optimum appearance. For example, invasive plants like Bermuda grass can puncture through cracks in tennis courts, affecting play. Weeds detract from the appearance of our lawns, gardens, and ornamental beds. Excessive weed growth can reduce the value of real estate, while a well-maintained, weed-free landscape can increase the property value of a house. Many weeds, particularly noxious weeds, are increasing rapidly on public lands such as national parks, forests, and rangeland. The impact of these weeds on public land is tremendous. The invasion of these plants does much more than reduce the aesthetic value of public land. The encroachment of noxious weeds reduces the habitat value of native wild lands, making them unsuitable for some wildlife. Melaleuca currently infest over 500,000 acres in Florida, Southern California, and Hawaii. It has the potential to infest additional areas along the Gulf Coast. Mature Melaleuca trees eliminate all other species and have only a limited wildlife value. Due to their high oil content, they are volatile and can cause a fire hazard to adjacent areas. Melaleuca is considered the #1 problem by the Exotic Pest Council as a threat to wetlands, especially the Everglades. Potential losses to the South Florida economy alone are estimated at about $169 million annually. In addition, over 250,000 people in southern Florida suffer from Melaleuca allergies. Other invasive plants like purple loosestrife are causing similar problems in the north. Purple loosestrife is a major problem in Canada and in the northern tier of the U.S. It can quickly colonize wetland areas, crowding out native plants. Once established, purple loosestrife becomes a monoculture mass of vegetation, wreaking havoc on wildlife habitats because it has little or no food value for native animals. Several states in the Midwest have passed laws prohibiting the planting or sale of purple loosestrife. Many of the noxious weeds in the United States were introduced from European and Asian countries. As a result, quarantines are sometimes needed to prevent alien weeds from spreading in this country. In case studies of 24 natural areas around the world, primarily national parks, researchers have identified nearly 1,900 species of invasive plants. Aquatic weeds in lakes and rivers can interfere with boating, swimming, and fishing. Weeds can be hazardous to swimmers because of the danger of becoming entangled and drowning. They can foul the propellers on motors and make a site unsuitable for water skiing. They can also interfere with navigation. Weeds can make a pond or lake unsuitable for wildlife. Large quantities of decaying plant matter in a pond can cause oxygen tie-up, resulting in suffocation of fish. Weeds may block the flow of water, preventing proper drainage, and causing the buildup of silt and debris. Stagnant water may also provide a breeding habitat for mosquitoes and other pests. Weeds in water reservoirs may impart off flavors and odors to drinking water. Hydrilla is a submerged aquatic weed that is found in all southern states. Hydrilla's range extends north up to Delaware and west to Arizona and California. It crowds out beneficial plants and degrades water quality. It has minimal wildlife value and can stunt bass and panfish populations. Hydrilla can interrupt water flow in irrigation canals and interferes with boat traffic. Water hyacinth is found in all southern states to Virginia and Missouri and westward into Texas and California. Its growth rate is among the highest of any plant known. It can double in population in 12 days. Water hyacinth has prevented boat traffic from using infested waterways in Florida and California. Large masses adversely affect fish populations by consuming oxygen as dead leaves decay. The possession of water hyacinth is prohibited by Florida law. Weeds adversely affect non-crop areas and impede transportation. Tall weeds, such as Johnsongrass, pose a hazard along highways by blocking visibility. Johnsongrass forms a thick mass of stems that can reach 8 to 10 feet in height. It can spread from roadsides into cropland, where it is a serious competitor with our major crops. Highway maintenance organizations spend considerable effort keeping guardrails, road shoulders, and other areas along roadsides free of tall vegetation. They must be kept off of road signs to allow motorists to read them. Weeds also must be kept off power lines and telephone poles so they don't interfere with electricity or communications. Railroad lines must be kept free of weeds so they don't interfere with the movement of railroad cars or proper visibility. Russian thistle, also called tumbleweed, is a serious pest in the western United States. Large tumbleweeds block the view on rights-of-way and can be a fire hazard. Kudzu is a serious problem along roadsides in the south. It has a very rapid growth rate and outcompetes native vegetation, upsetting the natural diversity of plant and animal communities. It grows up trees, telephone poles, and abandoned buildings. It has spread as far north as Massachusetts and west to Texas. Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi have the greatest level of infestation. Weeds compete with crops for water, nutrients, and light, and cause crop losses if uncontrolled. As few as 2 velvet leaf plants per square foot in soybeans can reduce crop yield of over 50%. 1 cocklebur plant per foot can reduce cotton yields by 90%. Weeds like wild garlic can cause objectionable odors in milk and in wheat. Certain weeds produce toxic substances that suppress crop growth. Weeds can harbor insects and diseases that infest crop plants. Weed seed contamination in harvested crops may require expensive cleaning and processing for removal. Jointed goatgrass is a noxious weed in the winter wheat growing areas of the United States. Grain elevators lacking adequate cleaning equipment may reject winter wheat contaminated with jointed goatgrass. Viney weeds growing up branches of Christmas trees and forestry trees can interfere with normal growth of branches, resulting in a less desirable tree. Weeds have a profound economic impact on our lives. Conservative estimates indicate that the economic impact of weeds on the United States economy is about $20 billion. There are 2 components to the economic impact of weeds. The first component is the cost of the reduction of human health and activities. The other component is the cost associated with controlling weeds in agricultural production, forestry, recreation, industry, and aquatic areas. The total economic impact of weeds in the agricultural production is estimated to be over $15 billion in the United States. The impact on golf, turf, and ornamentals is over $200 million. Approximately $60 million is spent in forestry. Over $800 million is spent in rights-of-way, industrial sites, and aquatics. Over $3 billion in other areas.
I hope this video on the impact of weeds has been informative to you. For additional information, please contact the Weed Science Society of America.